Welcome back to Call Me by Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. And on the show, I get into it with my guest as much about what made playing that game special and fun for them, as we will try to dive into the context of how and when they had this moment with it. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug today, you can find a link to those wonderful little goodies in the show notes. So whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other ones that I don't know about, or even watching on YouTube where we have a full video version of all of these episodes every gosh darn week. If you scroll down in the episode description, you're going to see links so you can click them and to support us and all the cool things we do. Speaking of which, if you don't already, follow the show on social media and TikTok. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, but especially TikTok, where assuming there's not a huge issue with the software, I have fun highlights for every episode. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the housekeeping. And I'll finally introduce our guest for today's episode. Please welcome to the microphone, musician and slugger, Tim Neumann.
Hey, Connor. Thanks for having me.
Buddy, I'm so glad to have you. And how appropriate it is that the two of us today, who I wouldn't say, and we'll get into it, our initial rather connection wasn't sports, but it does feel appropriate that you brought on a sports game to discuss a little later today.
Yeah, I feel like I gave you a few different options, and something in my brain told me you were going to pick this one so we could
I
kind of get into the sports of it all.
I think it was that we had probably discussed the other games, and so I was like, "Hey, how do you feel about doing this one?" And you took the option. So I'm so stoked to have you, Tim. I know you. You know how I know almost every guest on this frickin' show here through the Los Angeles improv community. You are someone like there's kind of like a whole subsect of people that I've met through my childhood friend Jeremy Olson, and you happen to be one of those goons out there.
That's right. Friend of the pod, Jeremy Olson, Modesto native. And that's your connection, right, Connor?
That's our connection. We knew each other. I think we may have known each other before we started going to the same church because I know that my best friend growing up, Eddie, his older brother Alex and Jeremy are the same age. And so they somehow knew each other before that Eddie and I's family went to this new church. So there's a chance that I had brushed shoulders with Jeremy and we, turn around as we're going down a hallway and look at each other like something's to come. But yeah, I've known Jeremy for a long, long time. We also went to, we talk about this on his episode where he also talks about a sports game, Super Mario Strikers. Any familiarity with that game?
No, I'm guessing it's a soccer game.
It's a soccer game. It's a great soccer game. And Jeremy and I went to the same college as a specific university, and that's where his big moment with the game took place. But yeah, that's our connection. I can't exactly like pin down how and when I would have specifically met you. I'm ashamed to not know that. Do you happen to know the time outside of just being familiar through your former roommate and our friend Jeremy Olson?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, and I feel like this happens a lot in the community, which is that you sort of like are aware of other people for a while
Yes.
because you see them at a show or you see them on Instagram in like another friend's picture. And so sometimes it's like, oh, I might see you like three or four times
Yes.
even before we actually ever say a word together until there's someone to like actually put you two, together and say, oh, this is Connor. So I feel like I was aware of you at some point in 2017, 2018,
Yeah.
maybe. And probably once I started hanging out more with Jeremy and a few other people in our crew at that point was when I started, meeting a few others. So I'd
I
probably
think
guess around then.
that feels completely right to me. I want to really validate you today, Tim. I'm just going to over validate today. But no, that's pretty much exactly what I remember too, vaguely. I remember seeing you around the clubhouse a little more because you had to have been on like teams that were playing. Am I correct or am I wrong about that? Or were you
No,
just
you're right.
around the crew? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I that's how I met Jeremy, was through classes. I think we met in 2016, and then
Okay.
around then I started playing with my indie team. At that point called Executive Brunch, classic
Okay. I
improv kind of name.
that is perfect. There's another team that I was just trying to remember, and it was a team I actually coached, but I wonder if you all played Tuesday Night Thunder, an old show I used to run.
I feel like at
Hard to
that point
say.
we played them all. There was so much. Feels like a lot more shows back then. I don't know if that's just I'm a little less involved now, but it
Mhm.
seemed like there was so much to do back then.
Yeah, I think I was talking to a friend about this recently, and the indie scene is so different now than it was before the pandemic. There are still just independent shows that run out of the clubhouse and probably and other theaters as well, but like accessible shows for up and coming improvisers to play seem to somewhat be isolated to the I would say the shows that are run through the new indie schools like We Just or We Improv, which are amazing, but there's not. I was just because I was thinking about an old team of mine. We kind of want to play a show, and I was like, I don't even know who I would submit to. I don't know how to do that. You can't just go to one of these institutions and be like, hey, can we play a show when all of your students, in a block where your students are paying to be there for time? um, so anyway, that's a roundabout way to be like that. That's definitely how we met, I think, and we started coming into contact more and more. I want to say well, I actually kind of remember more specifically when I was getting back into playing baseball, which has come up a number of times on this show as well. Last year, before my first year back, I think I had posted something on my Instagram that the league was looking for more players and that there was like an open tryout, and you expressed interest too. And I remember talking to you outside of Birds one like it was like a January or February evening.
Yeah, I remember that. I think I was there with Jeremy and
Yes.
probably after some show and just paths cross as they do at Birds. And that was on either your mind or my mind or
Yeah.
something. And yeah, I think it's very cool that everyone sort of in their 30s is like, oh, I'm trying to get back into something that I'm missed from my childhood, and that's definitely what I was trying to do. So once
Yeah,
baseball got brought up, I was like, oh, how do I kind of get into this,
for
kind of
sure.
weasel my way in?
And it didn't work out that year. I don't think you were able to come out for the like league, the big league practices, but a whole year later, delayed gratification, I guess. You were able to come out a bunch of times this spring, and now you are just a stalwart in that Satchel's batting order, Tim.
Oh, I love it. It's my first year back. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, he's
Since I
getting
was
emotional.
probably,
We know baseball means
I'm
a lot.
choking up. Probably since I was like 15 or 16 was the last time I played organized
Yeah,
baseball. And it just right away I felt like so comfortable getting right back into it. And the Satchel's team is great. The energy, the vibes are immaculate, and I feel like y'all welcomed me right in.
good.
And yeah, I feel like part of the team. Right away, I felt like I was part of it. So that was awesome.
Good. I'm so glad. It's sometimes I wonder about that with a group of, because we have, I think, well, now we have 17 people. We were supposed to have a roster of 20. We had 19. Two people disappeared off the face of the earth, or rather, three three did technically. So I'm glad that you felt that way because it's just such a big group, and not everybody is there every week. But it's been so good having you out and just having not just an excuse to like see you and like just at least goof off with you a little more regularly, but to play with you and also to watch you fricking swing the stick, my man. You got a nice swing on you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very validating. I feel like that's all you want to hear as a baseball player is that you have a good swing.
Dude, truly, as soon as like, I mean, you're also like very solid defensively and like I'm comfortable with you on the field anywhere, but truly, I remember when you were out for that one of the only practices we got to do together, and I threw batting practice to you. I think you only got 5 pitches, and I truly think you smoked all 5 of them. And I already wanted you on the team because I knew you, but at least that made it a lot easier for me to be like, hey, Jaquise Janitra, he's my friend, but also he smoked the ball out there. So let's get him on the team.
Honestly, that practice memory is up there with any moment in the season that we've played
Really?
so hard because I hadn't really hit that
Yes.
much in a long time, and I remember you were pitching, and there was a big long line of everyone because this was like an open practice, so there was like
Yes. It's like
probably
40
40 or
people.
50 people. I was like 30th in line, so everyone's just standing in the middle of the infield, like waiting to get like five pitches just to see what happens.
Yeah.
And I feel like there were, not to toot my own horn, but I was watching and I was like, oh, people are having a little bit of trouble. Like, I don't know if Connor's just like from here, I can't really tell. Maybe Connor's like pitching harder than I expected him to
Yeah,
be
maybe
for
these lobs are
BP, or
actually hard to hit.
and I don't know if it's just the adrenaline or I feel like I'm good under pressure.
Yeah.
I don't like really buckle, so I think the pressure of all these people watching me like really paid off, and I feel like I hit like five really nice shots, and I
Dude, they were
remember,
all like smoked liners. I like remember it too. I'm glad that was such a fun moment for you. I
yeah.
remember that because it can be hard to just like, I feel like even established players can go up to like, one of those spring batting practices and you feel like you just don't even hit one well. So I'm glad you felt that way. And yeah, dude, it's just been awesome having you on the team. It's been such even more fun than last year, I would say. And I think we have four games left in the second half, and then likely at this point we'll almost surely be playing in a single elimination playoff. So a lot more funs to come.
I can't wait.
Also, I haven't pointed it out because I've been seeing small pieces of your wardrobe it's like they've been revealed to me as we've been talking. But for those of you watching on video, Tim Tim is in a full golf outfit right now. I noticed first your hat because I was like, oh, I know you're a Reds fan, but it's not a Reds hat, but it is a red hat. Then I noticed, is that a divot pick thing or like a marker?
This is a little marker. It says "Kiss My Putt."
Okay, cute,
Classic.
cute. We've got for those at home, a marker, a ball marker on clip to Tim's hat. We've got a wonderful looking polo shirt. But you know what really tipped me off was I finally saw your right hand slide into frame, and we got a golfing glove on. You're dressed for the moment, my man.
You told me I had to wear my full golfing uniform for this.
Tim, I was trying to act like it was organic, but there goes the ruse. But dude, you look fantastic. Thanks for
Thank you.
thanks
Of
for putting this on for the pod.
course, it just felt right
I should have
for
done the
the
same.
game
I'm
that
sorry.
I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
All
That's my
right.
bad. Tim, I've been talking a lot about our connection and our recent connection that we've been able to forge this year. Is there anything else about yourself that you haven't talked about that you want to share with the listener? Whether it's, music or just how cool you are in general. What do you want to share with us today?
Well, I don't feel too comfortable talking about how cool I am in general. I think
I'll do a whole
you
post
can
pod
do,
by myself where I just rave.
yeah. But yeah, I guess like you said up top, I'm a musician and just play around LA in a bunch of some original bands, some cover bands. So all that stuff is in my social media if you want to check it out. I'm in a punk band called the Mormons, and I play with the Pearl Jam cover band, and
Yeah.
really just whatever I can jump in on. I try to like sub in for a lot. So
Of
right.
course, well, if you don't mind shouting out your socials for people, I'll put a link in the show notes, but just so they hear it.
Yeah, it's everything's at Tim Neumann Jr. I'm a
Cool.
junior.
Love it. And of course, I gotta shout out a band that I've never seen you play in, which is a shame, but I have to because it's a cover of a band I really like, Hot Hot Fuss,
Oh yeah.
with
Maybe
three former guests of the show, Brian Rainstein, Cassie Jerkins, and of course Jeremy Olson. But that band kills.
thank you. You've never seen us, but
Never
you know
seen
we
it, but
kill.
that's a hard assumption I'm making.
And you'd be right. I feel like we put on a fun show. At this point we play once a year at Halloween,
Yep.
and we love it. We play a bunch of Killers covers and some other covers from like the late 90s, 2000s, and have a blast.
Dude, that's some good stuff. Well, Tim, thanks so much for sharing a little bit more about yourself. I'm sure details will pop out as we go through the pod, but before we get into your general history with gaming, will you please introduce what you brought on for the main event today and call me by your game?
So today I brought Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004.
Can't wait. This is going to be awesome. This I think is the first, I'm almost sure is the first golf game we've discussed on the main feed here. This is episode 218, by the way. But we have this year discussed a different golf game, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour for the GameCube. Have you played this one?
I've not played Toadstool Tour. I've played a more recent Mario Golf game that I think came out in the last couple of years.
Yeah, Super Rush, I think, for the Switch.
Yes.
Yeah. Me and actually Loomis and then Amanda, my girlfriend, I do a monthly group episode of this show that's a bonus for patrons on our Patreon, and we basically played this game like twice a week with each other for like 2 months and then talked about it. It was so much fun. I mean, I'd love for you to play it sometime with us. We can get a nice foursome going,
Oh
perhaps.
yeah. That sounds
To
great.
keep it on theme. Well, I'm pumped to hear from you about Tiger Woods PGA Tour '04 in the main event later. But let's get into your history with games, Tim. Do you remember like some early memories that you have of video games, whether it's watching or playing?
Yeah, I think very early on I was playing like computer games for kids. I feel like that was like an early
Oh,
form of
of course, of course.
babysitting was like, especially I think Humongous Entertainment was the name of the brand. And one of my favorite early games is Pajama Sam, There's No Need to Hide When It's Dark Outside, which
Tim, it might blow your mind to know that 3 years ago, somebody talked about that on this podcast, which I was so surprised that you threw it out.
it's I've had vivid memories. I must have played it for hours and hours, and as I must have been like 5 years old, so really core memories from a video game standpoint.
Yeah.
I remember it being very scary. Also, I was very scared of that game, but I couldn't stay away, and the design was so interesting. It was a very cool world.
I love
Um,
that.
I think
Did
there was
you?
also a Freddy the Fish game, which played as
Yes.
well.
So that's so cool. As a kid, I mentioned my best friend Eddie earlier. He's who got me onto the Humongous Entertainment series as a kid because he had like the some putt putt games, a Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam. Do you know Spy Fox?
I remember Spy Fox as a
Yeah.
logo. I don't think I played the game, but I remember it being there.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah, that was one where as soon as you threw it out as an option when we were, leading up to the to recording, I was just so excited to hear from you. Being that you played some like of their point and click children's adventure games, did you ever get into the sports side, Humongous Sports?
I'm trying to remember the
We're
only
talking,
sports. Yeah, what
go
are we
ahead.
talking here?
Oh, I was gonna say it's the backyard sports series, so backyard baseball, football, etc.
Okay. And if that's the case, then yes, I was going to say that's the only sports game I remember playing when I was very little is backyard baseball, and
Nice.
I loved it. I feel like I've seen you play it on some posts before, so I'm
Yep.
sure you're a hard fan.
Huge fan, dude. Like it's a game we've discussed like several games in the series on this podcast network over the years. Um and I've streamed it a bunch too. It's a game that I truly can go back to like every year because I still think it's still fun enough. But it's so simple that like there's so much joy to be had, but I'm glad to hear you played it too.
Yeah, I never really got into any other sports games and was never really, other than Tiger Woods,
Yeah.
but never really got into any sort of like NBA 2K stuff or
Okay,
anything.
yeah.
I sort of stopped at backyard baseball and I was like, there's nothing that's going to beat this.
Honestly, I would say you're pretty much right, buddy. I still think it's so good. So some early memories for you are like, playing on like the family computer is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think it started there. And then when I got a little older, we had an N64 and a PlayStation. And I feel like I played sort of the big name games there. I
Cool.
definitely played GoldenEye a lot. Um, I was a big fan of Crash Bandicoot. So like
Okay,
any of the Crash
cool.
Bandicoot games and Crash Team Racing.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
I like Mario Kart, but at that point in my life, I was all about Crash Team Racing. I played that game a ton. Um, and then Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 especially, like the soundtrack is so good, gameplay is so
Yes.
fun.
Do you remember, I mean, it doesn't matter, but did you play that on the N64 or PlayStation 1?
That I played on PlayStation.
Okay, cool. I think the series is generally like I played it on both, but I know that apparently the PlayStation versions are a little better for whatever reason. I couldn't tell you what it is, but yeah, Tony Hawk series is just like a home run.
Yeah, I feel like with both systems, I had almost a preference where if I was like playing a game with a gun, I wanted to play it on N64.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's because of the controller setup with the
Y-
trigger.
Yeah.
And other games I would want to play on the PlayStation, I like Crash Bandicoot, although that might have just been a Sony thing, so maybe that's why I remember playing it.
Yeah, it was, but either way, I totally understand that. There's certain games that were on both that I people have preferences for sure.
Yeah,
That's cool. So this is like early childhood. By the way, are you playing or I can't remember. I think I've asked you, do you have siblings at this point? Are you an only child? And is this Ohio that we're talking about?
that's right. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio,
Gorgeous.
a little suburb called Mason outside of Cincinnati, about 20 miles out. And I had a younger sister. She's 3.5 years old. So I feel like she wasn't that interested, at least in my memory, in video games. But when
Yeah,
she was, even then there wasn't a ton of like crossover.
sure.
Maybe a few things that like when maybe I was like 8 and she was like 5. I remember we had a Donald Duck game for the N64
Okay, yeah.
that we would play and bring around like on road trips. We would like bring it in the car and hook it up to
Oh,
a little like TV VCR
dude,
in the
nice.
back of the car that I think my dad was just like, we'll get rid of the seats in the back and you guys can just lay down and play video games while we drive. Very,
Dude,
very dangerous, but very fun.
that is some risk reward right there. That is so awesome. There was something even outside of first of all the like laying down of it all. That sounds awesome as a kid. But there was something so novel about being able to play like a console in a car because we never had that growing up. I eventually got I had a GameCube eventually, and I still have like a screen that would attach to it. Um, but one of my friends growing up, Eddie, who I keep mentioning there's three times already. He's going to appear like Beetlejuice. He had his family had like a tiny little VCR, TV VCR setup that they would put in theirs, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I feel like my family in Texas, and once a year we would drive down to Texas, and that's like an 18-hour drive to Houston, and we would just spend all the time in the back playing games or watching kids' movies on the VCR. So it was very fun.
Ah, I love that. Where did your gaming journey go from here? Did you continue to get consoles? Was that kind of it for you? I'd love to keep going down this road.
Yeah, I had the PS2,
Yes.
which is where I played Tiger on, and I feel like I was playing once I got to like sort of middle school, early high school age, I was mostly playing with friends.
Yeah.
I didn't really like seek out a ton of like solo play games, but I would play a lot of, especially Guitar Hero was like huge for us in like freshman year of college. All my friends and I did was play Guitar Hero,
Dude.
and I love it. We were all in the marching band, and that's
Okay.
like all my core friends are in the marching band, and three other like freshman guys and I became like this fast group of friends. And then
Oh.
every weekend felt like we would hang out, and then it was like Guitar Hero if you're at my house because I have the PS2,
Hmm.
and then if we go to Nick's house, he's got the Xbox, so then we're playing Halo. And
Fun.
and kind of taking, I think every weekend, one of the parents, like another family, would take ownership just so that everyone else had a break from four teen boys
Dude,
causing havoc.
I love that so much. It's funny. I like, I've been gaming pretty consistently my whole life, but college specifically was also a time of mostly more communal gaming than anything. A lot of Halo 3, a lot of Super Smash Brothers. Um, where did you go to school, by the way? Was it in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I went to the University of Cincinnati for like film. They have a small film program
Okay,
there,
cool.
more of a media studies kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Um, but I kind of lost my video game interest. Not that I totally lost it, but I had a lot of video stuff going on and music stuff. So I sort of never really got into once like late high school and college hit. I feel like I didn't really keep up with my gaming
Yeah.
that much. Maybe a little bit here and there, but if there was like a group hang, I think the people that I lived in a big house with like six other guys in college. And I just think no one really played video games. And if you
Sure.
don't have that, like when you're together, you kind of lose interest. So
100%. Yeah, that's very feels very common. Was there a time where gaming like came back for you, whether it was another communal setting or did you ever get like another console in your life?
when I got older, I think the big thing for me was that I loved Spider-Man. I think it was Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 2.
Yes, so good.
And I remember like the gameplay was like exactly what I wanted it to be. And I like Spider-Man a lot. And then at a certain point, they brought Spider-Man sort of. It was a brand new game, but it felt very much like it was like harkening back to that game
Absolutely.
for the PS4. So that I really just bought the PS4 to play Spider-Man, and I maybe played a couple other games over time, but it seems like now I'm only buying consoles in order to play whatever new Spider-Man game they're
Yeah.
gonna do. And that's why I bought the PlayStation 5 earlier this year, so I could play the new Spider-Man game.
Oh, nice, dude.
Yeah,
Um,
so
what did you think of that the part two? Because I really enjoyed it.
yeah, I would say I'm not finished yet. I'm about a third of the way through. I kind of put it down for a bit, but
Hmm.
I love it. Love the story. I feel like just I like collecting, and that game does a great job of continuing to introduce like, oh, you have to take photos of the city. You have to go around and take photos of the city for the Daily Bugle, or Miles Morales left his backpacks all over the city, and you have to find
Yeah.
those too. And you have to, knock out all these crime fighting challenges. So I enjoy that. And then I think the story was really fun. The graphics are fun, and the fighting is like for me just challenging enough
Yes.
to do. I never really played a lot of fighting like one-on-one games like Tekken or anything back in the
Hmm.
day. So like button mashing was not really like a thing I ever got used to. But I feel like because maybe it's because it's a one player game, so I feel comfortable like pausing, looking at the menu of moves and trying to be like, okay, for this fight, I'm going to practice these kinds of things or
Yeah,
try to
like a
get this
combo or
down.
something.
Yeah, like this one, I'm going to try to do this combo where I, hit more villains up in the air, or I,
Yes,
use my webs more, so that I don't do the same punch every time. I feel like
totally.
you could do that by yourself, but when you're playing with someone else, there's sort of a pressure of like, I don't want to slow the game down. I just want to get into it.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's cool, dude. I would say like because I played through that game, I didn't, platinum it, which is where, where you get all the trophies for a game, but I did 100% it because I thought the collecting was mostly really fun and I love to do all the challenges. The only thing I would like if you go back to it and finish it, the only thing I would say is kind of a must finish is the spider bots. You're collecting spider bots throughout the game. I would just say, even if you look up a guide, collect all of them because there's a cool little Easter egg if you do that.
Oh,
It's
okay.
totally I think it's totally worth it as if you're a Spider-Man fan.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna go back and I will collect all of these things.
Nice.
So that's
Um,
encouragement.
dude, I love it. That's so much fun. Tim, is that kind of like catching us up to like your recent gaming, or is there anything else that you've played in the last few years that you want to shout out?
Um, I think that is the main one. Maybe this is a good. I know you have some recommendations coming, so
Yes.
I'd say a thing that I tried to do a few years ago was try to like catch up on all these like prestige games that I feel
Yes.
like a lot of people love and that I think it's cool that they're elevating video games to an art form and people talk about like The Witcher 3 and the Red Dead games and The Last of
Yeah.
Us. And I know all of those games came out, some of them a while ago at this point. So I
Mhm.
think I was at a GameStop and I had maybe sold my Xbox because I wasn't using it and I used the credits or whatever to buy like three or four of those
Cool.
games. And I tried to play all of them for a little bit. And I think on every game, I got to about 4 hours in, and I was like, I cannot invest in this world. So impressed with what they've built, but it's like
Yes.
hour four, and I'm still like, I just spent 20 minutes like walking through the forest with a guy like teaching me things that
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to remember. And I think I want to appreciate those games, but the games I like are ones where you're jumping right in and taking action. I like
Hmm.
Crash Bandicoot because you're getting right into it. Or
Yes.
Cuphead was another game that I feel like I really gravitated towards of like
Oh,
constant fresh
nice.
yeah, constant frustration like for 50 attempts and then you finally get it right and it's so satisfying.
100%.
So I think I'm finding that is the sort of game that I like.
Okay.
And I feel like the sports games can be like that as well.
Yes.
So I'm finding that Spider-Man feels like a little bit more of an outlier for me
Yeah, for sure.
in terms of what I like. But I would love to find like a classic prestigious game that I feel like I can appreciate. So if
Okay.
anything comes to mind.
I I don't like this might be a bit of a risk, and if I had a physical copy, I'd just let you borrow it, but I only have it digitally. Um, I would recommend try Did you ever play Shadow of the Colossus on the PS2?
No, I never played that one.
So they remade it for the PS4. I think you can buy it on the PS5 digital store for 20 bucks. If you're ever in a place where you're curious, I think that game is kind of one of those prestige titles that will wow you, but it also is pretty simple and gets you right into it almost from the jump. Like you kind of have to seek out the first thing, but once you do that, I think it might work for you. It's it's I can't speak praises about Shadow of the Colossus enough. So if you're ever curious, just take a look.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing about some of your history with gaming. That was really fun to hear from you. We're gonna take a quick break, Tim, and when we come back, we'll finally get into all things Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004. So I'll see you on the other side.
Hell yeah.
Welcome back to Call Me by Your Game. It's Connor McCabe here, still here with our gosh darn perfect guest, Tim Neumann. Tim, thanks for sticking around.
Of course.
Like I told you before the show, we're finally going to get into the main event today to discuss Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004. And I'm going to do a little table setting for the listener. But if you want to jump in at any point with a factoid or something important to know about the game, please do.
All right.
Cool. Without further ado, here I go. Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 is a golf video game. Who could have guessed it? Developed by EA Redwood Shores for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox versions, because there are many versions of this game. Headgate Studios helped develop the Microsoft Windows version, and Backbone Emeryville helped develop the Game Boy Advance and N-Gage versions. Do you know what the N-Gage is, Tim?
No, I don't.
It was this weird phone, like mobile or phone handheld gaming hybrid they released in like 2003 that was supposed to there was like hype about it and it ended up not selling very well because it was like $300 and kind of a piece of crap in general. I'm sure there's defenders out there who are freaking out as I say that. But I was just amazed to hear that they released a version of this game for that. This
Huh.
game was published by EA Sports for all of these titles. It's the continuation of the PGA Tour Golf Series, where Tiger Woods was the cover athlete, and the game was named after him from 1998 through 2013 before Rory McIlroy became the new namesake. The series is now just referred to as EA Sports PGA Tour. And I would say one way that I remember this game is from what I would consider the golden age of EA sports titles and sports titles in general, where I'm not sure how familiar you are, Tim, but EA Sports or EA in general is kind of seen as one of these bad companies out there in gaming, both for their practices with labor and consumers, but also because it feels like in a lot of ways, they just recycle their games every year as opposed to actually putting, real effort into making fun, new, distinct versions. Both with like the FIFA series, Madden gets a lot of shit for that generally. But this era, when this game came out, they were riding high with like the MVP baseball series, which is one of my favorite series ever, NBA Live, which isn't the best NBA series, but like I love it. It's one I'm nostalgic for. And Madden was killing it too. So this really fell into a beautiful time. Uh, Reviews were very positive for the console versions and the PC version. So the one that you're talking about today routinely got like eights and nines out of 10 and was well loved and kind of retrospectively is seen as one of the best golf games that was ever made. People don't have to bring on good games on this podcast. Sometimes they bring on crappy ones, but this is one of many that people love. Tim, were there any details you wanted to share that's important contextually before we dive into your time?
Um, I'm trying to remember if there's any. A thing that I really liked about the game was the character creation.
Yes.
And at least for the Tiger Woods series, I believe this was the first game where you had a really specific version that allowed you to like spend a ton of time creating. I think they called it maybe game face, and
You
you
are
could. Is
nailing
that
it.
right?
Exactly.
And I remember never seeing anything like that. Not that I had played a ton of sports games, but it just felt so novel to me at the time that this was an element of video gaming, and I was fascinated by it. And
Especially
so
for a
I
game that you might want to put yourself in or create a wacky character. But I kind of stepped on what you were saying there. Sorry.
no, I think you're 100% right. It felt like, you're not really going to get that in Mario, a Mario game where you can
Never.
design your own. Although maybe they should consider that because that'd be kind of fun.
That
But
would.
yeah, there were so many details, and I remember spending, I can remember playing the game as much as I can remember exploring the menu and finding these elements, or there's other things you can buy. So many different like things you can purchase, golf balls and celebration dance moves that you could buy,
Yes.
and all of these things that again I had just never seen before. So I don't know how many of those elements were introduced in this game from the Tiger Woods series, or how many like if other sports games had that. But I remember really appreciating that.
I think that this game, like, sort of set the standard on some of those elements. I don't remember sports games before this having like optional celebrations that you could choose, like, customize for your character or like choose one. Um, and accessories even like seem kind of unique to this. I want to point out right now that this is a fun phenomenon on the show. Occasionally a guest will bring up one of the fun facts that are later in the podcast. And Tim, you've done it. Ding ding ding. I got my facts today too. I'll save the other one for the actual fact new about your game segment, but I got them from the fandom.wiki page for Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004. And yes, like you said, EA Game Face made its first appearance in this game. And like you kind of detailed for us already, it's a mode that allowed the player far more extensive customization options, way more than the previous title, with the additions of they had like sliders, preset colors, and hairstyles, and some of the other details you were talking about. But yeah, it was a big deal, and I became a mainstay. I don't know if they still offer this in the game. I'm kind of doubtful, but it's something that they would use at least for a few more versions after this.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense for a golf game to be where this might originate because the actual like animation and gameplay of a golfer is there's not a lot going on
Yeah,
on screen. It's just swinging.
totally.
So it feels a lot easier to create from a graphic standpoint, like a golfer than it is to like create your own unique basketball player or, football player at that time. I would guess. I really don't know what I'm talking
There
about, but
definitely could be something to that. This is unreal. I mean, this is related, and I'll get back to, and then we'll finally dive into your time. But I wish I remembered the name of the YouTube channel off the top of my head. But there's this old channel that would go into like customization options for creator characters in different games and see the craziest things they could do with them. I don't remember if it was called like Frankenstein or like Monster or something, but like if I think of it, Tim, I'll send you the channel because that might be something you actually find in entertaining based on your enjoyment of this.
I probably would enjoy watching it, but I had like a very ethical approach to the way I would dress my character, where
No way.
I would when I'm setting up my character, I would go through and like look at all what the sliders were like, and you got to see what your guy's going to look like with the giant butt. And I
Of
even
course.
I even read that later on they tone down the size of certain body parts that you were able to mess around with. But as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy, I was like, I gotta make something huge just to see what's happening here.
My guy's got to have a dump truck.
But when I actually went to like lock in and go play the game, I only wanted my character to look exactly like what I thought I would look like. Honestly, right now, the way I'm
Yes.
dressing right now is how
Yes.
I would have my character like look back in 2004 when I was playing this game.
Dude, I love that. It's funny. This is something that when this sort of is a feature in games that we talk about on the show, I like to ask people what they did with character creators because some people will, like, I think I generally would do, especially for sports, would create someone that's as one to me as possible, or like what I might look like in the future. Versus, I know that some people have fun in making basically like creating a completely different character that they're role playing as, which is probably more common in like I've been playing the Mass Effect series this year and you can like I could have created me, but I created a whole persona and a different guy. So that's always just fun to me to hear about. I didn't know if you have anything else you wanted to say about that.
Yeah, no, I don't know why I never wanted to create a different persona, but I feel like the craziest I got was like, what if my guy wears a funky shirt? And that was like a big deal to me. I played as if I was like going to be watched by people and that they were going to judge the way that I
Yeah.
dressed. And so I don't know why I took it seriously, but I did. And I like that you could still buy all this stuff. And I think like that was a big part of the game that I liked too, was I still have this crazy wardrobe and I'd buy all the hats that you could
Yeah,
purchase and all the different things. And some of them, I think some of them like did help your game, but a lot of
sure.
them didn't. Um, and I remember the dance moves. I guess that was the one thing that I would uh, buy and play. Is I think this just happened when you hit a good putt. Is that your character would like execute some dance move that you could buy, and whether it's the lawnmower or whatever you could have your character do. So that was
That's
great.
so good. I definitely saw some of those in doing research for this episode, just watching people play the game or watching like a retrospective video. Those seem so much fun. Since we're like kind of getting into it already, I'd love to know how you even came to play this game. Was it one that you discovered? Was it one you're anticipating? I mean, of course you discovered it at some point, but yeah, how'd you come to play it, Tim?
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of did just fall into my lap in that I never really played any golf game before this, and I
Okay.
didn't even play. I wasn't like interested in golf or anything. But my mom got remarried when I was 12, and we moved in with my stepdad, and he was the one who had the PlayStation 2, and
Okay.
he just had like a handful of games for it, and one of those games was Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004
Okay.
because he liked golf, and so it was just
Maybe
sort of like
I'm thinking maybe you thought he was going to see your character at some point, which is why you're like, I'm creating the safest thing possible in case his stepdad walks in.
that is maybe that was part of it because I think we were just sharing the same,
Sure. I'm
saves and
so sorry to
everything.
interrupt you again.
No, so maybe that was, but I think even as a kid, I was very like self-conscious about everything. Not even that, I never even really thought a ton about what my parents thought. I just had a very like, I need to be like a very good kid. I need to play this game right. I
For
think he
sure.
even had Grand Theft Auto, whatever, and I
Whoa.
was like, I can't play that. I'm not him.
That's
Uh,
so good.
so yeah, I think it just sort of was an option, and I ended up out of all the ones playing it, really at least at that point, played it the most out of any of those games that he had, which were not a lot, but I think all of these things that we're talking about, the character creation, kept me around. And yeah, I think that was just, it was also because I had moved into a new house that was sort of far because at this point, it was like 30 minutes away from like where I went to school.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't really have it because it was new. I feel like I was like, oh, looking for something to like take up my time and
For sure.
like sort of like ground myself in. And so for some reason that ended up being Tiger Woods PGA Tour.
Dude, that's so funny. We've talked a lot about just how great and funny the character creation was. Do you remember like other aspects about the game that you enjoyed, or like getting into the sport of like learning the sport of golf through this game, kind of?
Yeah, I think I knew the game, and
Sure.
I had definitely like been to a driving range or two. My stepdad and my dad both played golf
Okay.
occasionally, and so I feel like that was a big like Father's Day. I go with him, and we get a bucket of balls at the driving range
Cute.
just to mess around. And because I had been playing baseball, that was my main sport, and I feel like there is a pretty good connection of the golf swing and the baseball swing. So I was able to like feel pretty comfortable right away.
Cool.
So I knew about golf. I just never
Okay.
really wanted to make it a focus of my life, at least at that point. And so I felt like I got the rules, and the game made it very easy to understand the uh, the controller and how it kind of related to like, the golf
Yeah.
swing. I feel like it was just challenging enough to be able to hit a good swing and to sort of like do the calculation of okay, my ball's in the rough, so I have to add this much to my swing
Yeah.
to really, I think everything now that I know from playing golf a little bit that you do have to like think about when you're actually playing. So there is like a lot of crossover there. I think I appreciated that. I felt like in some ways I was doing the thinking you would do when you're playing the actual sport of golf, which
Yeah,
might not be the case for other sports games.
that's funny you bring that up, because that was kind of the conclusion I was getting to as well. I wonder, and this is just speculation, I wonder if, because I do the same thing when I play golf games. When we've been playing, I was talking about Toadstool Tour earlier. When we're doing that, we're talking about it as if we're out on the course. And I wonder if that's because, I mean, golf is isolated to just the time you're hitting the ball. And there is so much sort of consideration you have to take before you take a swing. Like, how's the weather? What's the club? What's, like you said, am I in the rough? Am I on the fairway? Am I in the bunker? And so maybe that all that planning just translates really well from video game to, I guess, actually playing. In theory, I still am way worse on the actual course than I am in any video game, but some of that does translate, and I think that's been helpful to me. So maybe it was kind of similar for you.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right on that. I remember the putting being very, they show you like the slope of the greens, or there's also, I remember a caddy tip feature where they would give you what the caddy says is like if you're putting,
Oh,
you need to aim 7 inches past the cup and 2 inches right. But
oh,
but that's a relative distance that you're guessing based on where you're placing the shot.
okay.
It's not like a grid where you're like, okay, I'll go 2 inches over and 7 inches up. There's a good combination of like giving told or being told the math plus like you trying to figure it out yourself. And then of course the swing that you hit had to be you had to be a certain level of perfect in order to like execute the shot you want.
Yes, that's fun. That was one thing that really stood out to me was the putting specifically and the caddy feature because, me coming from Toadstool Tour, it's not like it spoon feeds you, but it is more of like, especially when you putt, it's like grid based where you have like you can turn and the grid will turn with you, but you can generally guess like, okay, if I'm going uphill, the grid just makes it a lot easier to sort of measure that out where as the caddy feature, maybe it helps it feel a little more real than like a arcadey golf game. I don't know. I'm kind of just speculating here, but it's possible.
Yeah, when I do play golf now, I feel like there is that sort of like you're doing the math when you're putting, but there's a moment whenever I hit where I'm like, I don't know, this is just a guess. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
hoping. That feels a little more realistic. I think I felt that in the game too. Whereas the slopes, sometimes it's a little more like, oh, I wish I could have this yellow grid vision when I actually play golf, but I'm not that lucky.
Wouldn't it be nice? And then also it'd be especially nice if like I just wouldn't fuck up every other swing that I took somehow. Um, I love that. So I had like I thought, I'm so sorry. I had a thought about the game that I was going to ask you. Oh, so getting into your created player that you had, were you using this guy to like go on like a PGA Tour run? Would you just play courses at a time for fun, like an exhibition? How would you do it?
Yeah, I think this another thing about this game that I liked is that I liked all versions of the gameplay. So I would play like courses against my stepdad, or my friend John would come over and spend the weekend or whatever, and we would play this game all
Cool.
night. But I remember it having a very fun, like, sort of challenge too. I think you're trying to defeat golfers of a certain caliber over time. And I think because I played this one, I played 2005, and
Oh,
after that
cool.
I stopped. I think 2005 introduced more sort of like classic champions that you could play against, like
Oh,
Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and all these guys, and that they would, be characters in the game. And so I think you're kind of doing, you could do that sort of championship experience, or you could do, I think, like a PGA Tour level, like,
fun.
I'm doing all the majors and I'm doing these other things along the way. So yeah, I definitely I kept up with it all. I believe they also had sort of like it was either like a horse kind of setup or like a trick shot kind of thing where you're for this game you're trying to hit like iron shots at a target and you have 20 shots to hit the bullseye 10 times. So I feel like that was like a fun, it was almost like
Sure.
Top Golf in 2004 on a
Yeah.
video game.
It's a game where like I don't think I would have guessed that in a golf game, mini games like that would be fun, but it really does translate very well. Like I'm sorry to compare this so much to Toadstool Tour, but they also have fun modes like that. They have like just a putting mode where you go to like mini golf basically. They have one where as you play the course, you have to hit your ball through specific rings that are in the air. So any way to like gamify it and make it more interesting is always welcome. So I'm glad to hear this game has some stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a fun element that I, again, didn't really expect, and I didn't seek out the game knowing that it would have any of this,
Yeah.
but I appreciated all of it.
That's really cool. Do you have, and I know it's so long ago at this point, 20 years ish since you played this, had your heyday with this game. Do you have any like memorable moments in game, whether it was like you went on a run or a memorable match against like a big golfer? Does anything like that stick out to you?
I have one very specific memory, which is honestly why this game came to mind when I kind of pitched it to you,
Oh, wow.
is I have such a specific memory of my friend John being over and we were playing a course, and this game had like you can make hole-in-ones kind of often, like
Okay.
certainly more than real life,
Uh-huh.
which I'm sure I will never make a hole-in-one. But it was still challenging. So if you made a hole-in-one, it was really cool. And the way that the game play worked, if you hit a really good shot, I thought this was really cool, is like, if you aim right and you sort of have done the math and you hit the shot really well, as soon as the ball's in the air, the game changes and the screen goes like into a almost like a widescreen effect, like
Okay.
it letterboxes, and the music stops and it does like a heartbeat effect, and they do like a close up on the golfer face, and you get so excited and you're like, oh my God, did I just hit the hole in one
Uh-huh.
shot? And then it cuts to the ball creeping in, and you don't get the hole in one every time. So sometimes it's just a little
Oh.
tease, sometimes it's just a very close shot,
Oh.
and then sometimes the ball will drop and we would just lose our minds. And this specific game, I hit three hole in ones we were playing like an 18 hole
Oh
course.
my gosh.
And I was losing my mind. And this was probably at like 1 in the morning, and everyone else in my house was asleep except for me and my friend John, just like jacked up on Mountain Dew playing Tiger Woods. And I remember being so excited that I wrote, because the way the game would like reward you was with money.
Okay.
So if you hit a good shot or whatever, it would always just be like your total in the corner would go up,
Hmm.
and a hole in one would be worth so much money in
Yeah.
the game. So I wrote down the total money of fake money that
Uh-huh.
I got on a piece of paper and taped it to my parents' door so that my stepdad would see it in the morning when he woke up.
That's so cute.
Because I was just so pumped about how good I shot in this fake game.
Yeah.
It's great.
Dude, that's awesome. I like that just leaving a note for him to wake up to and he'd be like, "I'm proud of you, son." Gosh, that's so good. I love that kind of memory. Yeah, there's something fun too. This is a little adjacent, but like, man, gaming with like one of your best friends, just like staying up late at like your house or their house. It was just like something really special about it. It's kind of a recurring theme on the show.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably a universal experience for a lot of people. And I remember, so that's my friend John. I feel like he was there for all these iterations. He was in the Guitar Hero group in high school,
Oh wow.
and I remember when Blockbuster was still a thing, you could rent video games from Blockbuster, and I remember we would rent games sometimes, and because you had to like turn it in 2 days or whatever, we would just take turns and sort of like one person plays as long as they can whatever game until they die, and then you pass the controller over
Yeah.
and just back and forth all night to beat whatever game you're playing.
Dude, that's cool. Did John go to University of Cincinnati as well?
He did.
Oh,
Yeah, he's been my probably my oldest friend. In fact, he just texted me while this podcast was happening,
John,
because
what's up?
I'm going back home in a couple weeks and we're going to catch a Reds game.
Dude, so much fun. Gonna watch Ellie De La Cruz hit like three triples or something like that.
Oh, I hope so. You know, that's my number in for the Satchels. I have the same.
I should have guessed. That's sick, dude. Oh, that's fun. I mean, it's funny that, not every episode has, different themes or stuff that comes up. There's also recurring things. You're talking about the universal experience of playing, with like your best friend for a while. And yeah, it's so funny. I maybe it's kind of fitting that I brought up my friend like that, Eddie, so much growing up, because we just had so many experiences. In fact, the only time I ever played this game was because he had it on the GameCube. And so we would play it there. I remember thinking that I believe in this game, the way you swung is you use the stick, right? You didn't press, it wasn't button presses, was it?
No, it was the stick. And
Cool.
although I think you could like augment it with other buttons, so you would
Oh,
be swinging and you would be like adding spin by
oh,
triggering something, or I feel like that would be the main thing that you could do. So you could really dial in, and that felt like a fun element, as opposed to like playing a golden tee, that like kind of
yes.
arcade, like just pushing the ball back and forth
Oh,
game. This
yeah.
one felt like a little more controlled.
I kind of like that feature too. There's something that feels right about like rocking back and rocking forward. Um, Tim, I want to do, you've already given me such an amazing memory. I want to do a little scene painting, and I want to know at your house when you guys would have been playing this game, where was this room? What was the setup like? Like, I want you to take me there right now, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is Fairfield, Ohio, and just like a classic suburb. We had, I think our living room was like sort of the front room,
Okay,
and had like, some big boxy gray TV
sure.
that we did everything on. And I remember we had like big couch, lazy boy chair, and then like these video game chairs that would
Uh-huh.
be, we would be like 2 feet from the screen on these like uncomfortable, like they kind of fold up, I guess you can put them away, but they're
Sure.
barely a cushion against like a piece of fabric that you're just like, I feel like you're 90 degrees in the air directly in front of the screen, and that's
Something
where we
that
would
like
sit.
only a 13-year-old could sit in, because if you did it now, you would like not, you'd pull your back for like a month.
Yeah, and we would spend hours, there with like a big bowl of popcorn in between us, just playing whatever game we're working on, or watching a movie. So that's where all the magic happened.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that's fun too. I'm just thinking about, especially you two staying up, doing it like in the living room. I feel like me and my friend, we would more so go to like each other's bedrooms when we'd stay over when it got a little later, just to like kind of isolate ourselves. But I love the idea of you guys like having this, especially the hole in one moment, the three-peat rather, just having that out in this big room just sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure like there's definitely like you're celebrating, but you're very aware of the volume
Yes.
that you're creating, so you're sort of like quietly like, "Oh my God," kind of like
Yeah.
shouting, and because you that's the worst. You can't have a parent come down the stairs and yell at you. That's like
Yeah.
strike, you get 2 strikes before you're in trouble. So
Yeah, no way. That's how it works, of course. That's awesome. Tim, we've just heard this has been so much fun hearing from you about this game. Are there any elements about it that you haven't brought up yet, whether it's part of the game or like life context stuff at all? I just want to give you a chance to share anything extra that you didn't get the chance to.
yeah. Oh, well, one thing we didn't talk about was some of these incredible music choices that they would play. mostly while you're on the like the loading screen or like setting up your character.
Yeah.
And I remember that the big one from 2004 was Party Up by DMX.
Oh my gosh. I'm looking up the soundtrack as you say this, but that's for a golf game, that's so funny to me.
Yeah, it was great. And then I think there was also an Outkast song, but that might have been on the next. That might have been, let me see, 2005. Yeah, The Way You Move was on
Oh, so good.
2005.
You know what? You saying that I may have played 2005 then and not 2004.
Yeah, I think they were very obviously it's back-to-back years, and I think they were pretty similar. I think 2005, like I said, introduced like a more of a legacy play element. But I remember them being the soundtracks being great and the choruses being awesome. I guess I didn't mention that either. Was the course design always seemed really cool to me, and there were some that were like very historic, and
Yes.
you'd play Pinehurst, and then there were some that they had clearly made up so that you could play like by a volcano, but it still almost felt like it could happen. And
Sure.
I didn't know enough about golf to be like, oh, I don't think they would have a golf course right there.
Yeah,
In my mind, I was like, I'm gonna one day maybe I'll play at this volcano course.
that's so good. Um, well, before we do move into the post-show segments, Tim, would you do me a favor and just wrap up the place that Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 held for you?
Yeah. Oh, I guess I don't know this part of the podcast. I didn't listen this far.
Ooh,
Just telling
spoiler.
you about what it means to me. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, just kind of like putting a bow on whatever place this game held for you.
Yeah. I mean, I never played another Tiger Woods game after like 2005. So
Hmm.
it's a very specific time in my life, and I feel like I guess I just wore it down so much because I remember like at a certain point just being like, okay, I don't need to play this anymore. I'm
Yeah,
moving on to a new game. But I feel like it was such a good escape at that point when, like I said, it was like a new house. I was getting used to like a new situation. It
yeah.
was great to have like a game to play to like connect with new people and old people in my life. And yeah, just something about like a perfect balance of this the sport of golf and like video games. I feel like it really like melded those two together in a way that really worked for me.
I love it. Well, thanks again, Tim, for bringing on Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 to the podcast. I'll lead us into our first post-show segment, the Fact Me by Your Game segment, where we already shared one fun fact because you brought it up, and I just have to interject in the podcast when that happens. The other one, Tim, you actually kind of just hinted at, which I have titled Courses Galore. So Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 had the most courses in the series up until this point in time. It retained all courses from the previous iteration from 2003 and also included 7 additional courses, bringing its total to 14 actual playable courses in the real world and 5 fantasy courses. So this is probably some of the ones you were talking about that were a little more fanatical but could feel real. One of these, so I've been to 2 of these courses. I've golfed at one. My parents have a home in Pacific Grove, California, which is like 20 minutes from Pebble Beach. So I've this year when we were visiting, we went and kind of like walked around because Loomis was with us and he really wanted to see it. So we like checked out the clubhouses and looked at the course. Have you ever, it's not that far from us. Have you ever been up there?
I have with my stepdad and like mom, and we had done a trip out here when I was in Ohio. We
Whoa.
like did a trip, I think I was 15, and we flew out to San Francisco and then sort of like did some things up and down the coast. And one thing he wanted to do was like just go see Pebble Beach
Do you remember anything
because
about that? Because it was beautiful when I saw it.
I don't, and I think I was like a little teenage shit, and I don't even remember if I really even looked at the course. I think I was I think I was reading the new Harry Potter book had come out also, and I brought
Awesome.
that on the trip. And so I think we were at the course, and maybe the idea of like, oh, we're not playing, we're just gonna go look
Yes.
at it and like think about how expensive it would be to play here. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to read about Harry's latest adventures.
Yeah, you're just reading about Dumbledore yelling at Harry for putting his name in the Goblet of Fire, or did he? That's so good. So I've been there. I did actually watch. They have a celebrity pro-am there every like February. My dad and I watched part of it in 2014, so 10 years ago at this point. But Kapalua, which is a golf course on Maui, I played when I was 14. And I remember playing with, and that's, I think, a new one that was included in this game. And my dad and I played with this like older couple when I was 14. Just good time. I just wanted to shout out some of the courses. But that'll do it for the Fact Me By Your game. It'll bring us into our final segment of the show, the game recommendations. Now, Tim, this is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where I am going to treat Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 as your summer passionate love that you have in Italy. This just romantic fling. Um, of course, that fling's not going to work out, just like the movie. So in order to help you get over the heartbreak, I've got 3 recommendations for you that all have a little something in common with your game. How does this sound?
Sounds great.
All right. The first of which is if you want another all-time sports game from this era, I'll recommend MVP Baseball 2005. I kind of brought this up earlier already. This is another EA title, but this is still considered by many to be possibly the greatest baseball game ever. Um, all I can really say about it is that as someone who loved baseball at the time, when this game came out and loved video games, what you were saying about Tiger Woods melding the two together felt, sports and games in general, this felt like the same thing. And I don't feel like I've ever played a sort of a realistic baseball game since that felt so good. But yeah, MVP 05 is your first. You haven't played this, have you?
I don't think so. I've played some of the show
Yes.
recently.
Hmm.
I think I got that in the pandemic just to try it out, and that felt like it was like almost too realistic. It was so
Yeah.
hard to hit, and again, like I said, I like a game that I can kind of get into right
Yes.
away. So, but I
This
don't
would have
think I
been
ever
more your
played this
speed, I
iteration.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Uh,
what about it stood out to you compared to like other baseball games of the time?
I felt like it was easy to pick up and play, and with all sorts of difficulty levels, but it had the option to, push that up if you wanted. So if you need help, if you're struggling at a certain aspect of the game, just drop the difficulty and it feels accessible and fun, and it feels like instinctual when it comes to baseball. Like whether it's like when I'm pitching, I'm sort of, this is probably true for a lot of sports games. I'm pitching like I probably would a real hitter, depending on the pitches that this guy has. So yeah, it was fun. It was good. Great graphics for the time. And my favorite announcers, the Giants radio and TV guys, Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow, they were the announcers for this game. So I was extra excited about that.
Oh, that reminds me, one other thing about Tiger Woods I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned it because it is a fun part is that the announcers will just kind of roast you, but like in a polite golf way. And I remember really appreciating the commentary to like kind of fill in the gaps because it is kind of boring if you're just playing the game and you don't have any audio. It's not like there's a lot going on in the game. So you have
Yes.
these fun announcers. I don't know who did it at the time. I'm assuming there probably were famous announcers for
Yeah.
PGA, but the level of commentary was really nice in that game.
I want to see if I can find that. I might not have that information handy because I want to know who did it. Gosh. I bet there's a way to find it, but uh okay, what it tells me here is David Ferretti and Gary McCord. I don't know if that's true. This is on NeoSeeker's website about this game. So yeah, could be.
That sounds right because I think they say their names at the beginning.
Okay.
As you said, Faraday, I was like, oh, that sounds familiar.
There we go. So your first recommendation, MVP Baseball 2005. The second one is if you really love the golf aspect of this game, but you need more of a narrative to get behind. You want a story, Tim. I'll recommend a game called just that. It's called Golf Story, and it's a golf. It's like a 16-bit or old looking golf RPG that actually came out in the year 2017, and it is so much fun. The golf is great in it, but also it is just a fun little narrative to follow as you sort of rise up the ranks as a golfer.
Interesting. I've never heard of this game.
It's you can probably play it on your PS5, but truly such a strong recommend from me. That's actually real because they're not always real recommendations. And the final one for you, it's really hard to look at this game, Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004, and not just remember the things Tiger's been through over the last, you know, 20 year or 15 years or so. Um, so if you are in a place where you're like, I kind of want to play a sports game with a scandal-free star. So Tim, I tried to look for one, and it's definitely possible. But the first one I saw was NCAA football 2009, which just has the mascot for that was the Michigan State Spartan, like the costume that they have, the
Oh,
actual
right.
mascot. And I was like, oh, that's perfect because for this, joke that I want to play. But then I thought I was like, wait a second, and I Googled Michigan State scandal, and it's actually this game doesn't qualify because there's been a numerous bad Michigan State scandals. So I actually don't have a third recommendation for you. Scratch NCAA football 2009.
Okay, yeah, you can't. I feel like it is worse to choose a mascot of an organization because then you're covering all the bases of all that organization's mistakes.
Especially these like Division 1 colleges, like it's never ending. But um so I'll just recap your recommendations. You've got MVP baseball 2005, golf story, and then that's it. No third recommendation. So, Tim, that'll do it for the Rex, and that'll actually bring us to the end of the show. So, before we go and maybe replug your socials so people can find your bands, dude, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. It's been so much fun spending more time with you this year, and I really appreciate you taking about an hour out of your day to hang with me on the pod.
Of course, I feel like we have a lot of similar overlapping interests, and I always love talking to people who are just as interested in sports and sports stuff as I am.
Huge. Well, it's been great having you on the show today. What do you want to plug today? Whether you want to shout out your socials again or truly anything?
Yeah, I guess like I mentioned, I'm in a couple of bands, and my sort of main band I'm in is a punk band called the Mormons, which is a kind of a Devo sounding like new wave punk band, and we dress up like Mormons when we play. And they've been around since 1997, I think, and I've
Helmets and all.
helmets and all, helmets, backpacks while I play the drums, and it's been a blast playing with them. It's very fun. So if you're ever in the SoCal area and you want to hear some punk, we'll be around playing, and we're trying to play more regionally too. So maybe some other
Sick.
places.
Dude, that would be awesome. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes, to at least your social so people can find the Mormons. But I'll go ahead and just close this out with some plugs of my own. And again, just to reiterate for the listener, all of these things, including Tim's plugs, are going to be in the show notes. So scroll down. One of these things sounds fun to you. Go ahead and click it. The cover art for Call Me by Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his great other art on Instagram at Glenn with two N's .jay. This show is produced, edited, and the original music throughout is by Jeremy Schmidt. If you want to give our special guy a thanks, you should check out his podcast, Video Games, a comedy show, wherever you get yours. You can follow me also on social media on Twitter and Instagram and on Twitch at twitch.tv/consiscool69, where I've been on a real lull streaming wise, but I hope to get back at it and play some games for some upcoming co-op episodes. Lastly, too, is if you like me and the discussions I have with people about video games, you should definitely check us out on Patreon over at patreon.com/super NPC Radio. That's a place where people who like us and our podcasts can support us, for at different tiers financially every month. And in return for your support, you get bonus podcasts. We always have a games club that we do every Friday where we go through a game in a book club style format. And so right now we're going through Hollow Knight. So if you're a fan of that game and you want to hear a 10-part series on one of the greatest games ever, check us out on Patreon at the $5 tier. That's there for you. If you like us and you're like, well, I really don't know if I can support right now or if I want to, we also have a free feed of our old podcast. So check us out at Super NPC Games Club, wherever you get your podcasts. Currently, our series on Super Mario 64 is airing, where we go through that game in the same format. We just have a bunch of crap out there for you folks. I want you to listen to it, whether it's for free or the current stuff we have on Patreon. But that'll go ahead and do it for another episode of Call Me by Your Game. We will see you on the next one.